I grew up in a small country church, much like this one. Had wooden pews, and we sang out of hymn books. I can remember the light pouring in through the stained glass on sunny Sunday mornings. We sat in these pews, and I sat in between my parents. My dad would sit on the right, and my mom on the left. And I thought at the time, I thought it was because they wanted to sit next to me, but I think it was to keep me and my brother from getting into trouble. But my dad would sing bass during the songs, and my mom would sing tenor, long before I knew there was a Johnny Cash song about all that. And at the front, there was this wooden plaque that had a place that they would put song numbers. And those would be the songs that we would sing for the day. And I associated so many of the hymns that I grew up with those numbers. So I remember Almost Persuaded being number 21. I remember 25 being Anywhere with Jesus. 480 was Soldiers of Christ Arise. I remember 728B, which is Our God, He is Alive. And I remember song number 12. When we sang hymn number 12, it was different. The energy, the atmosphere would shift in the room. I mean, we sang songs, but man, we felt that one. In the tradition I grew up, feeling was suspect. You weren't sure about it, but it didn't matter with this song. It's people connected with this hymn, number 12, in a different way. The song goes like this: Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found, was blind, but now I see. You know this song. It wasn't until I got much older that I realized why people resonated with that song so much. See, as a kid, I thought it was just a better tune. It was a catchier melody. But I realized as I grew that people resonated with that song because they lived it. They remember what it was like to receive grace. They remembered the unexpected gift and what that meant to them and how that felt, that they truly were blind, but now they saw, that they remember the feeling of grace and all that. You've experienced those blindnesses too, right? We all have them. We all have those blind spots. We have the blindness of sin and selfishness. We've been blinded to our own dog-eat-dog world where we step on someone to get what we want. We remember the blindness of addiction, of hurting others and being blind to those who have been hurt. And when you receive grace, you receive sight. Grace changes your perspective. It changes how you interact with the world. And you see, we live in a world of ungrace. People get canceled because of their opinions on social media. People get fired for a tweet that they did 10 years ago and it's just now coming to light. People get ripped up, torn down, destroyed by their thoughts online about news, about politics, about COVID, about mask or no mask, about music and movies. You name it. People will put each other in boxes and categorize each other and judge people over and over and over. And the worst offenders of this is Christians. Jesus talks a lot about grace. He doesn't always use the word, but his stories are dripping in grace. Whether it's parties of a prodigal son or a lost coin, whether it's wedding banquets and feasts for the poor and the sick, his grace is all over his stories. There's one in Matthew 20 that I want to read to you in the message, and it's about workers in the vineyard. God's kingdom is like an estate manager who went out early in the morning to hire workers for his vineyard. They agreed on a wage of $1 a day and went to work. Later, about 9 o'clock, the manager saw some of the other men hanging around the town square unemployed. So he told them to go to work in his vineyard and he would pay them a fair wage. So they went. He did the same thing at noon and again at 3 o'clock. At 5 o'clock, he went back and found still others hanging around. He said, "Why are you standing around all day doing nothing?" They said, "Because no one's hired us." So he told them to go to work in his vineyard. When the day's work was over, the owner of the vineyard instructed his foreman, call the workers in and pay them their wages. Start with the last hired and then go on to the first. So those hired at 5 o'clock came up and were each given $1. When those who were hired first saw that, they assumed they would get far more. But they each got the same, each of them $1. Taking the $1, they complained angrily to the manager. These last workers put on only one easy hour, and you just made them equal to us who slaved all day under the hot sun? And he replied, friend, I haven't been unfair. We agreed on the wage of $1, didn't we? So take it and go. Can't I do what I want with my own money? Are you going to get stingy because I'm generous? Here it is, the great reversal. Many of the first ending up last, and the last first. We feel this one, don't we? It picks at our sense of responsibility. In a world of ungrace, we'd have canceled this guy. He's perpetuating laziness in workers, and it's no way to keep a business model going. He's going to be broke. We would have canceled this guy. Where would everyone be at the end of all that, huh? Jesus' story makes no economic sense, and that was his intent. He's giving us a parable about grace, which can't be calculated in something like a day's wage. Grace isn't about finishing last or first or who's in, who's out. It's not about counting at all. In a world of ungrace, we draw lines between people. We judge them, who's in, who's out, who's responsible, who's deserving. But God's economics flips that on its head entirely. In God's world, God dispenses gifts, not wages. None of us get paid according to our merit, for none of us comes close to meeting God's requirement for a perfect life. All of us sin. Not one person is responsible enough, not one person can work hard enough to get it. And the biggest act of grace that the world has ever seen is Jesus with outstretched arms on a cross. Jesus sacrificed himself. He became sin, the one who knew no sin, because he loved us and gave us a gift that we might become the righteousness of God. There's nothing we could ever do to earn our way into God's kingdom. It's all a gift. It's not a wage. C.S. Lewis puts it like this. To be a Christian means to forgive the inexcusable because God has forgiven the inexcusable in you. Which brings us back to hymn number 12, Amazing Grace. Again, I've learned that people have connected with that song because they lived it. They experienced the grace. They know the freedom. They remember the deep feelings of gratitude when they were forgiven, when they experience grace. That's what's so amazing about grace. It's freeing and it's contagious. And as the people of God, we are the ones who've experienced his healing. We're the ones who've experienced that freedom, his acceptance, and you can't help but give that grace to others because you want them to feel the same way you did. And that's exactly what the world needs right now. We are the ones who are filled with grace, right? We're supposed to be. As Christians, we need to give grace. Our words need to be dripping in grace. Our posts need to be dripping in grace. Our actions online, in our churches, and in our lives. This world needs the amazing grace we sing about, now more than ever. So this week, may you find a person to give grace to. Dispense gifts, not wages, for someone. Backspace instead of post. Choose grace-filled words. Forgive someone. Show them what God's kingdom could truly look like on earth as it is in heaven. And you might find that the person you need to give grace to is you. Forgive yourself. It is so freeing. Give yourself that gift. Let it go. God bless you, and may you share God's grace this week.